Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 982. I am Stephen in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
It's Thanksgiving here in Canada, or as the rest of the world knows it, Canadian Thanksgiving.
Or Monday.
This weekend. Today we're recording this on Sunday. It's a rare return to Sunday. Rip and read. This is if you're listening to this the second it drops, you're hearing us from 2 hours ago. That's how late in the day that we're recording.
From the Radio Free Skaro teletypes.
Pretty much, yeah. Recorded as live with very few recording breaks on Thanksgiving.
Just the mandated 2% changes.
That's true. On this episode, though, we begin. It's the big one, kids. It's the Terry Nation Miniscope, part 1, covering the 20 episodes of 52 episodes produced in that first year of
That was
Doctor
a lot
Who.
to get through. Let me tell you.
The Daleks, Keys of Marinus, and the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Our thoughts about that are coming up later in this episode. I forget what we say about it because we recorded that a few weeks ago. Patreon supporters would know that because we released it to you a few weeks ago. So, next week is our part 3 of our Terry Nation Miniscope, and we're recording our last part next Saturday. So we've got a lot more Terry Nation to watch over the course of this next week, and we do it for you, listeners. We do it for you. Warren especially loves.
I'm not doing it for me. That's for damn sure.
All of this. But he gets to watch Genesis of the Daleks and Destiny of the Daleks.
And I discovered that I actually really, really, really like Dalek Invasion of Earth. So there's that.
Oh, there we go. So
Which I'm just giving away later segment. But
that's true. Spoilers for later on in this.
I do remember what I said from 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. I don't.
Nope.
No, Chris, you don't either. But I forget what you think of these. I think you like Keys of Marinus better than we do, Chris, as I recall.
I do.
That's pretty low bar to clear, though. So just to further spoil.
That's true. But stay tuned later on in this episode for our full thoughts on 60-plus-year-old television, because that's what we do in the show. But hey, let's talk about new Doctor Who. How about so there's a bit of a furore out there, or a hubbub, a hugger-mugger, if you might. That it was someone who went to the Graham Norton Show, which tapes, what did you say, Chris, the night before? Tapes the Thursday.
Tapes Thursday for broadcast Friday.
Comes out Friday.
Or it used to be that way, I'm sure. I'm assuming it still is.
I feel it's probably the same, because the story came out that someone had clearly been to the Graham Norton show recording and said that, Ncuti Gatwa said that he's filming Doctor Who Season 3 in 2025. And all the places around this. Well, look at this. There we go. We're filming 2025, Season 3 and all that. So, they're filming Doctor Who, and B, Ncuti Gatwa was going to be in it. Well, that part got excised from the actual finished episode.
Which probably means it's true.
We'll see. Because RTD said in Doctor Who Magazine, which we'll get to because there's a whole bunch of stuff in this Doctor Who Magazine 609. That's pretty interesting. But one of the things that he said that it's always been the case. So he says that the Season 3 commission would only ever happen after Season 2 aired or dropped or was released. That's always been the case, he says. So,
but I've been thinking about this, and one of the main guys they would be talking to about this would be Ncuti Gatwa, because I got to figure out what his schedule is, and assuming they want him to be in the 3rd season, it all kind of depends on him, amongst a few other people. So he would be in the know to know this and then spout off about it inappropriately.
That's true. I'll speculate here too now, is that they do a in Doctor Who, this kind of ties in together, because they on DWN they do a big sort of recap or preview of what a TWB, the War Between the Land and the Sea, is going to be, and they finish filming right before Christmas. But maybe Gatwa, who if you'll remember, even before he appeared in Doctor Who proper, let slip that he recorded with William Hartnell. And everyone thought that, oh wow, there's going to be a crossover episode but no, it was just he recorded probably on blue screen the tiny little insert into An Adventure in Space and Time,
because the original was in green screen too, so you can just insert anybody in there.
Exactly,
which they did,
but you know,
right?
they probably just told him, oh, by the way, you're acting opposite William Hartnell, and he just said it because Ncuti Gatwa is sinks many ships with those loose lips, and
keep going.
Yeah, and so like maybe he thinks he's shooting just I'm shooting something in the new year, and maybe it's a cameo for Twiblats or something like that. You know, like this, it might be something
entirely possible,
as innocent as that as well. So factor that in.
But I'm interested in the fact that the BBC conspiracy had it cut or something happened where it was excised.
Yeah, I know, because I heard that I'd watched it through whatever means I did, and I was looking for the edit. Basically, is what I was. I was thinking, okay, where's the edit?
Zapruder, Graham Norton Show. This is what was become of us.
Yeah. In the midst of the statement, from what I saw.
Yeah, I like it, the edit was well done because I didn't see where it happened.
Because apparently the full quote was, "It's all going well. We did the second series this year. The Christmas special is coming up, and we are filming a third series next year." But the ending of that was changed for broadcast or reworked or whatever.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like it was an abrupt change. And as someone who edits podcasts for a living, I can tell where there's abrupt change.
It's not as easy as it would seem.
Yeah, so but you know, they probably just threw in a shot of Graham Norton insulting Doctor Who fans again.
Yeah.
Probably thought, well, there we go.
Standard operating procedure is for things such as these, like you just have a bank of reaction shots or something that you can throw in that you're gathering as you go. Like there's an ISO on Norton, right? So there are probably ISOs on all of them. ISO meaning a separate camera for each person, like in sports.
Yeah.
So you can just kind of, if you needed to, you can mix and match and paper something over.
Right. Well, I mean, he is on his own camera. And sometimes it feels strange that he's on his own camera and then the four guests are like crammed together on the side, or five because Kevin Kline joined late in the episode on the same couch. They could really come on. It feels weird. Anyway,
for instance such as these, there you go. There's your insurance.
That's true. That is true. Oh, that's true. That's how they make that show.
It's also been that way forever.
It has been. Well, early COVID, during the heady days of COVID, they all sat in like big giant chairs, like separated by 15
very
feet.
separated. Yeah,
at the time, because we thought that was going to help things. Which is adorable when you think about it way back when. So in conclusion, Ncuti Gatwa is going to be in that play, The Importance of Being Earnest, and may or may not be shooting in early 2025, but seems to be under the impression that he will be shooting in 2025. Russell T Davies says that we'll not know until season 2 goes out. If indeed it will be picked up for a season 3, be it from Disney, be it from the BBC. I feel like the BBC 100% would be in on it. Disney remains to be seen, especially given the amount of cutbacks they've been having lately, and across all their ESPN, ABC, that sort of thing. So it's not like Disney's in a spending mood, is what I mean to say.
Well, after seeing reports of what some of their Star Wars shows have cost them.
Good God.
I mean, those are some big numbers that I'm sure Doctor Who doesn't even remotely approach.
No. One episode of one of them, maybe not that, but it's like, not that much money, like you just said.
Yeah. Well, maybe starting off your show with a bad song about goblins and a weird episode about space babies farting, and another episode.
Well, as I said in the pre-show banter, I fell in love with a show made entirely of cardboard and garbage, and I can go right back to that if I need to. It's not a problem. I'm not going, why is this too? It's not slick enough. I don't care.
No, it's too slick. Maybe it's too slick. Maybe Doctor Who is too slick. What about that?
Maybe Doctor Who fans are looking for a reason to worry. Like that's not outside the realm of possibility.
That's also true. That's also, we do feel more comfortable when we're worried about the show a little bit. Yeah. In that Doctor Who magazine 609, Russell T Davies' production column there is sort of like a rundown of the war between the land and the sea and where they're at there. He says that RTD wrote episodes 1 and 5, Pete McTighe wrote 2 and 3, and then they both wrote episode 4 together. they're shooting in Mallorca in Spain right now. I think they're wrapping up in, I don't know, a couple weeks from there. But they will be done shooting the entire series by just before Christmas. So they say. So that's the production schedule there.
Neato.
So
yeah,
this doesn't qualify McTie for the Miniscope yet, technically.
Which is, I'm sure, his main concern.
No, it does not. We do not count spin-offs, because otherwise we would get James Moran in, because James Moran wrote an episode of Torchwood Children of Earth and one of Torchwood Miracle Day. Mm-hmm. Which would be, I'm just trying to think. Let's try and think of creators who would normally be eligible. Although, oddly enough, we do have John Black in the Miniscope, and he directed K9 and Company. But
that's technically, I guess it is a spinoff. Never mind.
It's a spinoff,
We also had Schalke in there for Paul Cornell.
We did have Schalke in there, so...
Well, here's the thing. We can bend our own rules if we feel like it.
No.
The end.
It's, what we demand, Warren, are originally defined areas of doubt and uncertainty. That's what it comes.
Yeah, apparently.
To.
Just like we did Keith Boak, and he technically didn't qualify.
That's true, yeah. And we regret it to this day.
Yes, well, that's why we have the Keith Boak rule now.
We do. Basically, the Keith Boak rule for listeners of the show who don't know Oliver Picadillos. Boak directed 3 episodes total, but not 3 stories, because he directed the Aliens of London two-parter badly, I might say.
It drives you crazy.
And then Rose, and then so we basically said, okay, well, we're going to count 3 stories now. But basically now the Keith Boak rule means that anyone who we don't want to talk about will just twist the rules around to not talk about them. Or maybe we could call it the Paul Cornell rule, and that someone who we do want to talk about will twist the rules in order to bring them, into the Miniscope. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I think the FCC is going to crack down on us about this. So,
that's true.
Or the CRTC in our case.
Yeah, and if we're going to throw Pete McTighe in the Miniscope, then do we throw in the little Blu-ray trailers, because he wrote a whole bunch of those? So
yeah, if he's in the Miniscope, then yes, we do.
Yeah, and he's produced, as we'll talk about in a little bit here, because it's also in DWM 609, the special editions for season 25. So,
well, that's neat.
Does that count? Probably not.
No.
Anyway,
that's like saying we should have a Miniscope on like Brendan Shepard or something.
Oh God, no, we don't do that. If we do Restaurate, we do like Chris Chapman in the Miniscope. We just cover off all the Blu-ray documentaries.
That would be a lot. That would be a lot. That would be a lot.
That would be a lot. Steve Broster in the Miniscope. Anyway, in Doctor Who magazine, episode 201 is what they're calling it. Episode 201. Kids at Home is what they're calling the first episode of season 2, and then 202.
Who the F is Susan, I believe it's called.
It is. Well, Russell T Davies said he has just changed the title of that first episode. So anyway, he goes through and says, what various parts of being ready and stuff like that, because they're still in the edit and doing effects and all that stuff. So even though they finished shooting it months ago, they're still deep in post-production when it comes to these season 2 episodes. So, and then he also hints at a secret project. Oh, we'll see, he says. What could that be, I wonder?
This is dumb, but ever since I got burned by those bug guys he hyped up, I don't believe a word he says about anything.
Oh.
The Tridivores?
Yeah.
From Planet
They're amazing. And I see them, guys in, pardon me, mosquito masks.
Mm-hmm.
Boiler suits.
Boiler suits, yeah.
I mean, clearly it's a spin-off featuring the Chumblies. And,
I mean, I'm down.
The world's been waiting for that.
Chumblies are ripe for a return to Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. I would like to see them back.
If he needs a reference model, I have one sitting right by me here on my desk.
Mm-hmm. Also in DWM, they have a lot of cool pictures of that Big Finish, the Stuff of Legend live production. I love that set. I love that they had the classic TARDIS set in behind on the stage there. It looked pretty cool. The Paul McGann thing and all that. I love that Paul McGann wore a costume for it, which is pretty cool. He didn't need to do that. There's also casting news for The War Between the Land and the Sea in there, where they... I'm excited about Vincent Franklin, who was in Cucumber, for those of you who watched other RTD stuff. But I know him mostly from as Stuart Pearson from The Thick of It. So he's going to be in that spin-off amongst several other people who I think I've seen in stuff. So... they're getting quite a cast for that little spin-off, It's it's interesting.
And there's Disney money in that too, right?
There's Disney money in that too. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the contractual obligation basically is the that, and then they tease.
That was the rider.
That was the rider. Yeah. And
what
then
the what between the what and the what?
I don't know. They tease the what the next Sea Devils will look like as well, but they don't actually say anything whatsoever. They just say, here's how they looked in this one, and then this one, and then this one.
Samurai helmets are coming back, baby.
They might not be coming back, Warren. I'm sorry to break it to you.
I know.
But.
Well, if they're not coming back, then long live the mesh shirts.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, Erica and I, like, when you if you go to a duty free shop on your way to the onto your flight or stuff like that, and you buy a bottle of liquor or something like that, and they give you this little mesh sleeve and to put it in so it doesn't break or something like that, and we always call that the Sea Devil thing because it looks like the mesh top that the Sea Devils wore in the Sea Devils. So every time I think of Gallifrey 1 and bringing booze to Cali, I think of Sea Devils. So maybe they'll bring them back.
Sea Devil blood will make you drunk, actually. Little known fact.
That is true, actually. That is true. There's a great rundown of all the stuff that they have done for the Season 25 Blu-ray set, which is coming out at the end of the month in the UK. Still waiting for a release date here in North America, I might add, for the Season 25 set. But a whole, they list all the new features and they dive into the special editions for all 4 episodes, which is kind of intriguing. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the set. I'm looking forward to it coming out. Looking forward to it even being announced to coming out in North America. Oddly enough, we have the Blake 7 one all ready to go on December 10th here in North America, but we don't have anything about Season 25 yet. So, but there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Special editions and stuff that Warren won't watch because you don't like when they zhuzh something up like this, right, Warren?
That's not true. I'll watch it once. That was out of respect for the work involved, and then I'll just go back to the old stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the Terry Nation stuff, I watched the enhanced visuals, whatever, for Planet of the Daleks, and barely even noticed that anything was changed.
It was well done. Rob Ritchie did those. It was well done, actually. On the changed it from being little toy Daleks to little CG little toy Daleks. Basically, no, it's better than that. But I also watched that because I don't think I had watched them before. I'm not too sure if I did or not. But
I saw the OGs.
Yeah,
there's a lot of times that I don't bother. Like Ark in Space and Ark of Infinity, I recall as being ones that I did watch.
Right.
And Ark of Infinity especially benefited from it. Ark in Space, I thought it took away, but. I still appreciate that it's done because it shows a different type of love for this thing that we all know.
Yeah, I like. I know they've done some stuff for the Blake 7, obviously. I kind of wish they would do this, but do like models and stuff, like just shooting new model shots for some of these. With maybe the model shots weren't quite as good. Like I'm thinking like Time Lash. Imagine how amazing Time Lash would look if we didn't have the shot on video spaceships of Time Lash, and instead had it shot on 35 mil film. Okay,
there's a certain charm to shot on video spaceships, but
you know what? Even it kind of like when we see outdoor location shot on videotape in a studio. I just, even when I was a kid, I was thinking this ship is shot on videotape.
In Stones of Blood where they go in hyperspace, I think that's shot on video and I kind of love it.
It's all shot on video. Nightmare of Eden's also, like, those are done on video as well, and I thought, well, you know what,
it doesn't look any more realistic on film, let's be honest here.
I suppose that's true.
They're both good. I have nothing against either of them. I agree with you on the model thing because model shots, they already look out of date in a certain way, but CG will look even more out of. Like if you see Voyager, half the fluid effects in Voyager look. Well, not just Voyager, not to pick on just Voyager, because everything from the 90s around that time when TV had the capability to do CG, but nothing like the amazing crap you were seeing on like a movie, right? As opposed to now where it's all just kind of merged together. But yes, the fluid effects in particular were terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't age well.
Odo's stuff was not good.
Oh no, Odo's
it was
stuff.
good at the time, because that's what you had. But
then we look at it now and goes, oh boy, eesh. Yeah. But how good would a model of goo being poured into a bucket would have looked like in 1993? Shooting that.
I mean, it was good enough for the 70s.
That's true. Yeah. Anyway, we look forward to the season 25 set being announced and indeed released here in North America. That would be just fab. Thank you very much. Based on all the stuff that we see in Doctor Who magazine 609, available from good shops near you.
And through your Pocket Mags app, because that's just the easiest.
That's exactly where we get it. Yeah, that's where I get it. So do that if you're outside of North America, or indeed in the UK, maybe. It's up to you. What do we got? Oh my God, Warren, it's Doctor Who dollies. Can you believe this? Coming soon, the 15th Doctor and Ruby Sunday action dollies, available from the character options site from October 17th. Where we see Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor with his, I guess, his default outfit, we'll call, with the long coat and the chains and the sneakers and the
sneakers, which I own real versions of.
That's right. And then there's Ruby Sunday with her phone. She's got a phone for character.
And he's got the landmine from Boom.
He is on the left, but he wasn't wearing that outfit in Boom.
Oh, controversy.
This is controversial. He also has a psychic paper.
That's true. That's a first, right? I think
it's a first, yeah. And Ruby's got a phone. Looks like an iPhone with a red case on it. I don't know what version of it did she upgrade in time for this action figure to come through. I don't know, but there you go. So I know, Warren, that Bookshelf Doctors has been on hiatus for a while, but
yeah, but I might do a couple of little tributes because these are new dollies. My whole saga is that since there wasn't a 15th Doctor dolly, I was in Forbidden Planet in London, one of several of them. I don't think the showcase one, and I saw a coaster for like £2 of the 15th Doctor, and I'm like, well, I'm putting this down right where the 15th Doctor's supposed to. In fact, I'm looking at it right now, and so that's going to sit there until I get my 15th Doctor dolly. Friend of WorldCon and the show, Juan San Miguel, said, hey, that's exactly what Kenner did in 1978. I'm like, I don't think it was planned like that, but yes, that is exactly what Kenner did. So now I'm sitting here doing the same thing to myself. But these two dollies are going to cost me sub $100 with shipping. So each, I think it's like £40 or something like that in England off the top. And so that's with exchange rate and shipping. I'm probably paying it. So I think I'm just going to I have to have Ncuti. Like, he's got to be amongst all the other doctors. Yeah. But I can wait for Ruby Sunday until I go to Gallifrey 1 if Americans vote correctly.
That's right.
I'm calling you out right now, Americans. Do you want me to own a Ruby Sunday action dolly? I'm sure it's top of mind. Then you know what to do on November 5th.
That's true. Get Warren to Gallifrey 1.
Yep.
Kamala Harris. I mean, obviously, I will be getting the Ncuti Gatwa and not the Ruby Sunday, as is that's my rule, is my self-imposed rule that I've been pretty rigid in sticking with. One Doctor action dolly and a TARDIS. I do have two TARDISes because Joe Martin's Doctor came with a TARDIS. I had no choice. But that's fine.
Yeah, mine has Sutek poking its out of that TARDIS and looking at the Sensorites, going, "What the hell is this?"
Oh, that's right. Well, technically, Sutek wouldn't have seen the Sensorites, Soren, but he would have seen everything after.
Well, they're standing around the Earthshock console, which Greg Fink, call out to him for making it, and two non-canon Cybermen who wouldn't be anywhere near it. So perhaps he went in the future, and there's a pairing with those two teams in my canon dolly nonsense.
That could be it. Chris, I know you don't go in for the dolly shenanigans. You're not buying these, right?
No. I don't really collect anything.
No, you don't.
Good future show title, by the way. I don't go in for dolly shenanigans.
No. Yeah.
I mean, I buy all the Blu-rays and whatnot, so I guess there's that. But
yeah, you even open some of them too. It's
the odd one.
The odd one. Sometimes he'll open it up and say, "Oh, maybe I'll take the plastic off that this year." But you know what? Maybe they'll be at Chicago TARDIS, Warren. Maybe that's where I'll pick up my my 15th Doctor action dolly in late November, because that's where it will be. It will be being me and Erica. You two aren't coming, but
nope.
So there, action dollies back. Of course, we just want more and varied different action dollies. So keep them coming, character options. I know you love making Daleks and stuff like that, but we have a whole list of action dollies that we would love to see in the future. I want a pack
of dot and bubble racists that I can then shun and make fun of every day.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That and a whole litany of space babies.
There you go.
Space babies.
Just the gachapon guys that you just find in like a little plastic bubble.
Yeah.
Those are your space babies.
There we go. Hey, remember when BBC America would have like screenings of like new Doctor Who episodes, and they go out and you go to the theater and everything like that, and well, now this is how far we've fallen as a culture, everyone. Now you have to
as a society,
you have to enter a contest in order to get one local cinema to air a Doctor Who episode. That's the thing that happens now with this Friendship is Universal, a festive special competition where you can enter to get a local cinema to have a screening for the upcoming festive special Joy to the World before it airs. If
one caveat.
you're in the UK or the United States.
Canada, you can go to hell as per usual.
Right to hell. Yeah. I don't know what the you just enter and it just randomly like you don't have to like perform a task or a video. I think they just literally randomly select you. Will they randomly select you, or will they say which play? Like, we're not going to pick some place in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have a cinema. We're probably going to pick somewhere where they're going to throw a cinema anyway. You know, I don't know. Seems dodgy to me, is what I mean to say. Anyway, if you're listening to this episode as it drops, you literally have 5 hours to get your entries in, because it ends on at midnight on the 13th of October. So best of luck. Invite us. You'll have to pay for an international flight to do it, because we can't.
Seems reasonable, yeah.
But we would appreciate an invite to this thing that we can probably turn down because we won't be there. But so there. Cinema screenings. Did you two go to a lot of the cinema screenings back in the day when they had them with BBC America?
I went to Wedding River Song, as I recall.
Yeah.
Not Wedding.
Husband.
The Christmas one.
Husband's River Song.
Husband River Song. Yeah.
You went to a lot of them, didn't you, Chris? I think.
Went to some Day of the Doctor.
That's a gimme.
Deep Breath.
Was that the 3D one? I know we went to the 3D one. I don't think I went to that one. I went through. No, I think. Not 3D of Deep Breath.
No, it's Death in Heaven.
Death in Heaven. Dark Water. Death in Heaven. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 3Dified, as I recall, back in the day.
Yeah, I don't think I went to that one either. I definitely went to I can't remember this.
What?
Husband's a River Song. Why is that stuck in my head?
Why is I know.
Because it was literally 2 blocks or 3 blocks away at a movie theater, so I just walked down and saw it.
Yeah, I think we saw most of them. I bet you there's probably like shots on like my pictures feed somewhere of movie posters. Oh my god, I've seen Doctor Who in the theater, because I think I've seen I saw Power of the Daleks, of course, when that came out. Power of the Daleks, for God's sake, an animated recon.
Oh, I saw Genesis when that came out.
I did too. I think Genesis. That's right. It was like a 2-hour omnibus or something.
Cut down version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, those are the days. Now I have to enter a competition. Anyway.
Yeah, come on, Disney money.
Right?
If you have access to a giant distribution arm, why aren't you putting Doctor Who everywhere? Come on.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Why can't I be disappointed by the Empire of Death on a big screen?
Right? Yeah, exactly. Imagine shuffling out of this cinema going, oh.
Now, having said that, seeing Sutek come back on the big screen would be pretty cool.
It would have been kind of cool. Yeah. Here's what would be cool. November 2nd, at Riverside Studios, there is a War Machines episode showcase with live Q&A with Gav Rymel, friend of the show, Gav Rymel, and James Goss. Will introduce each episode, providing a brief watcher's guide, and have a post-show discussion after each episode. Proper analysis of the War Machines from the very studio where they shot that episode back in 1966. So that's pretty cool. That's happening 2 p.m. November 2nd, Riverside Studios. Tickets available. Links in the show notes. This is the type of stuff that this is the type of stuff that I would appreciate seeing. Hint, hint, on the Dalek 6388 Terry Nation Army feed. Hopefully this will spur on, hint, hint, future episodes of that, because this is exactly what I would like to see.
A little rude, frankly.
A little bit, but I don't care. I'm an impatient viewer, and I want to see more. And
I almost thought you were going to say I'm an addict, and that is also accurate.
I am also an addict, and I have on occasion, including this past week, just randomly watched previously seen episodes of Terry Nation Army on Celestial Toymaker, on Jack the Ripper, on Dalek stuff. I just enjoy their stuff. So I would like to see this here spin off into another episode, because I want to know about the War Machines. Damn it, about how they smash boxes and stuff, and like what they.
That's the key,
right? Yeah. So links in the show notes. November 2nd, Riverside Studios, 2:00 p.m. Be there, because I would like to be there. So go in my stead, please. Thank you very much. Here's something I just wanted to mention, because it caused a bit of ruffled some feathers of old school Doctor Who fans when the BBC announced that they would be dropping new episodes on iPlayer at midnight in advance of their airing later that day on BBC One. Well, now Coronation Street and Emmerdale will be appearing on ITVX, which is their streaming service, earlier in the day at 7 a.m. before they are being broadcast on ITV1 later that evening. That seems big.
Spoilers.
I know. What will the forums say there? Will they have to stay off the internet for Coronation Street spoilers?
I'm not on Coronation Street forums because I couldn't care less, but I'm sure that must exist, and there is probably a hullabaloo happening.
Maybe, I don't know. It just signals that even Coronation Street, that the most venerated of old person television, is now doing the same thing, basically.
I want to see that as like when they do a promo of Coronation Street, have your quote come up before the most venerated of old person television, Stephen Shapansky.
Yeah, I mean, the average age of people watching.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
I know it's getting up there. So there we go. There we go, folks. Even Coronation Street and Emmerdale are doing it. What does this mean for the future of broadcast television?
What I kind of love about Coronation Street is when you hear that opening theme, you're like, I live in 1942 now. It just sounds like you're in 1942, even though it's set in the present day.
Yeah. We've spoken often about Chris's one-time passion for that show, Coronation Street. But no longer.
Which lasted for however many years, yeah.
Oh, it lasted for years. Wow. Golly.
Oh, yeah. Best part of 15, probably.
Wow.
Impressive.
That is impressive, actually, yeah. I lasted about 15 minutes, I think. Some Sunday.
My mom watches it sometimes on the Sunday. Like CBC will do like a compilation of all 5 days, and honestly, the omnibus version is probably the best way to watch this thing. And so if I'm home for Christmas, I will see bits and pieces of it. So that's all I know about Coronation Street, basically.
Right. Yeah. I don't even know if it's good for Doctor Who actor spotting anymore either. So like, what's the point? You know what I mean?
No idea.
Yeah.
Bruno Langley was in there, and
bring him.
Why please drop that torch into a sewer?
Come on.
That's still a fact.
Yeah, it's a bad fact. I don't like.
Yeah, William Russell was in it. John Savinitz. There you go. What's his name?
John Savinitz. Yeah.
Wasn't Ian McKellen in it, or was that a different one I'm thinking of?
He might have been in it. I don't know.
He loves just working, and I seem to recall he's in one like a week or two's worth of a soap as a guest star, just because he wanted to.
Yeah, well, I could see it. Jacoby was probably in it. Yeah. Anyway, a couple of some big Finnish stuff before we get the hell out of here and on with the Terry Nation Miniscope. Let's pick apart the cover for the new Jago and Lightfoot audio novel, The Lords of Misrule, coming out in January 2025. It features prominently on the cover of the lovely Mary Tam as Romana from the Reboss Operation. There's Tom Baker's Doctor Who in a still that comes from the Stones of Blood. And then there's Jago and Lightfoot and Horses and Carriages. Warren, what do you have any thoughts and
nothing about the cover,
opinions?
Other than Mary Tam's painting is looking very fetching as per usual. Yeah. Besides that, Lords of Misrule or The Lord of Misrule sounds like a lesser Iron Maiden album from let's say 87.
It does kind of
past their massive peak in the early 80s, but not quite on the way down yet. There's not really on the way down for Iron Maiden. It's always been pretty good, but I'm just saying, when a metal band is not quite as popular as it was, this is the kind of title they'd have, The Lord of Misrule. And they'd try to start some lore that nobody cares about.
That's true. Yeah.
Nothing against this particular thing.
No.
Sorry, Paul Morris.
Yeah, Chris, do you have any thoughts on the cover? Anything to glean from the cover? No, nothing at all.
No.
Okay. John Colshaw narrates it though on a novel. Jago and Lightfoot, Lord of Misrule, coming January. And then sadly we are disappointed we don't have cover art at all. But there's a new Third Doctor. Tim Treloar has been playing the Third Doctor for twice as long now as John Pertwee ever did.
Yeah.
10 years. Tim
He's
Treloar,
pretty good too.
Yeah, Daisy Asher, John Colshaw star in Doctor Who and The Brain Drain. That's coming out in February 2025. That's a full release. It starts then. And in March, Tom Baker, baby, Louise Jameson star in the Hellwood Inheritance, which is going to be released through March, April, and March, June, September. Sorry. All these were recorded in like 2020, like early days of the pandemic. Yeah, so they've been banking a lot of Tom Baker stuff over there and just doling them out. So
Doctor Who and the Brain Drain sounds like a Maclean's headline from about 2003, something like that.
True. Yeah, Maclean's being a...
There's why are Canadians going to America?
Yeah.
Like, money's better? I don't know. Because they can.
Should we reprint that column again? Yeah, why not? Just change a couple of the dates and we should be good. That's usually what they do.
It sounds like Maclean's, current Maclean's. Sorry, I have a very specific complaint for other Canadians who care about this, which is not very many people.
But we did fulfill the Canadian content requirement, thankfully. So well done, Warren. At the very end of the news list, because that is it for the news list. So now, at long last, folks, it's time to talk about Doctor Who writer Terry Nation in the Miniscope.
Just as I thought. A Miniscope. Now this is outrageous. Who is responsible for this device?
Welcome back. It's time, kids. We started this Miniscope several years ago. With was it
15.
15 years? Was it as long ago as that?
2009, I want to say. We started with Robert Holmes.
Robert Holmes, which we probably fired off on like we probably did his entire career like in 46 minutes or something like that.
Not this time.
But not this time, baby.
I think we took two or three chunks.
Yeah, we did. I think the past Miniscopes. I think we've made them into basically 10-hour movies now for Netflix. It's hard to believe that this name, given this name's importance in the history of Doctor Who, has not been picked by the randomizer yet, but it has now. This here, you are listening to part 1 of our 4-part Miniscope on Doctor Who writer, and according to the first edition of Trivial Pursuit, Doctor Who creator, Terry Nation. Yep, this episode will be covering his first 3 stories, the Daleks, aka the Mutants, if you're working for Doctor Who magazine, the Keys of Marinus, and the Dalek invasion of Earth. That all constitutes parts of the first production block. Terry Nation wrote 21 episodes in the first 52 episodes produced, which is staggering when you think about it.
That is a lot of cut.
That is a lot.
Yep.
Of varying quality, let's just say.
Well, let's get into it, I guess. Yeah.
Just to kind of just put the nail in the coffin, it looks like episode 153 released August 10th, 2009.
2009, man.
Was our first Miniscope ever with part 1 of Robert Holmes. Part 1 of 3 of Robert Holmes.
It still feels like a recent thing. Recently we started the Miniscope. Given that we've been doing for almost 75% of the history of this podcast, but
that was still 3 years minus a few days. 3 years into the run of the shoe.
That's true. That is true. And we've kind of done things differently because splitting up 3 stories amongst, because usually what happens here, kids, if this is your first Miniscope, what we do is often I'm the sucker. And I watch all of them because I have nothing better to do with my life. And instead of watching 100 shows once, I will watch the same show 100 times. So I am happy to watch all the Doctor Who for these things. And then we would usually divvy up between what Chris and Warren want for the other stories. But given how many there are, and given that we're doing this for 4 parts, you two have watched all of it, all 21 episodes of Terry Nation Doctor Who.
With several more blocks to go.
That's true, yeah.
Sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're varying it up a little bit.
That's true, because Chris, did you watch the Daleks in color as an alternative viewing experience?
By my count, it's 19 episodes for this chunk.
My math
766.
is off. 766. I thought so. I was, you know what? I said it, and I think I was wrong about that.
Just for the sake of shaking it up. Well, two things. One, I watched the Daleks in color rather than the actual proper full 7-part
lucky
thing.
Man.
Right.
I did not.
Just because, I mean, number one, I hadn't watched it since I bought the Blu-ray, and I wanted to watch the Blu-ray, so this is my excuse for that.
Right.
But just to see how it plays, because I mean, with 4/7 of the story being chopped, approximately,
more or less.
There's a lot that doesn't appear in that version, and it's still cohesive enough, I guess. But
cohesive enough. The Doctor Who motto.
Enough. But I watched the Daleks in color just for something different. And then one nice thing as well, and this applies to one of the stories that we'll cover in part 2 when we get to that, is having 2 of the 3 stories to watch on Blu-ray is really kind of nice.
It's cool, isn't it? Yeah.
And before I watched the Daleks Invasion of Earth, I watched the Behind the Sofa with for it.
Oh wow, I haven't watched that.
Yeah, it's Peter Purves and 7 women. It's very very female heavy, which is great.
That sounds like a title of a movie from 1957. Peter Purves and 7 women.
7 women.
Carry on, Peter Purves.
Yeah, exactly. It's either that or it's like some sort of East of Eden kind of a thing.
Right.
But one of the groupings was Peter Purves, Carol Ann Ford, and Maureen O'Brien.
Nice.
And just being who they are, the age they are, what they watched when they were young, how they grew up, you know, their exposure to the business at the time, all that kind of stuff. They were so effusive about just how great Daleks Invasion of Earth was.
Oh wow.
Even Janet Fielding was really, really praiseful of it.
Not seeing Paul Vanessa off screen say you like it. This isn't going very well. Come on.
with a gun pointed at all of them.
Yeah. Well, let's kick it off. I get the feeling that I think a lot of people, usually what happens with the miniscopes is that I often come out being a lot more positive about the subject, because,
interesting.
I don't know, a lot of these times I think we sort of like look for the positives, I think, when it comes to, unless it's Richard Martin, in which case we don't. Which honestly, watching some of these episodes and going, we're not doing Richard Martin in the miniscope, we're doing Terry Nation in the miniscope.
Yeah, I also had that problem.
Yeah.
Which is great because we already did Richard Martin sometime in the past.
We did. But we're doing Terry Nation. And honestly, I mean, we think about, Russell T. Davies and Stephen Moffat and Robert Holmes, but let's face it, the most important writer in Doctor Who history is Terry Nation, because he wrote the Daleks, and the Daleks is what kicked this series into the stratosphere and has never truly left since then. It's all because of Terry Nation. Listen, kids, if you're a young writer out there and you want to know how to get into the business, or at least how to get your name mentioned, be a writer who has your scripts in on time and ready to go, because that is why the Daleks was made second. Originally, they had several different other stories fall through. Malcolm Hulk had one. I think there was one about the miniatures and stuff like that. I can't remember who wrote that one, but Terry Nation,
Planet of Giants as a concept was bandied about forever.
Took forever to write. And all those sort of fell through at the time. And Terry Nation, who was fired by the comedian Tony Hancock back in June?
I didn't know that.
Of 1963, because he was a writer for him. And they had a row and everything because Hancock's career was going down the toilet, and he was lashing out at his writing staff, and he fired him. Says, well, I got no job now, so let's put all our marbles into this weird Doctor Who thing, because Terry Nation was in the same agency that David Whittaker was, who was the first story editor of Doctor Who, of course. And so Terry Nation said, okay, I'll write you some scripts, and he banged them off in record time in June, and then basically said, okay, well, I'm done with that. I'm going to go off and write something in Sweden right now because I got to find some work. And then they said, well, guess what, Terry? Your scripts are going to be produced second after this caveman stuff. So, and they did. And they were made, and they were a giant hit with the public. The Daleks.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a repetition of that towards Keys of Marinus as well, which I'm sure we'll get to. But
we'll get to, yeah.
But yeah, if not for the Daleks, I think it's safe to say Doctor Who would not be here.
Nope.
Which is weird through a 2024 lens because this thing drags.
Well,
and yet in
yeah.
1963, I guess it didn't. So.
I mean, it was the thing with 1960s Doctor Who and all episodic Doctor Who, you're not meant to watch it all in one sitting.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was originally supposed to be a 6-part story, but we actually need to do it for 7. So the only option was to basically stretch out episode 5 into 5 and 6. That's why that interminable trek through the caves is as long as it is, because that is true. That is the rough end. And when you have someone with not quite the dynamic nature directing it like Richard Martin did at the time, it does kind of come off as a bit of a slog.
I mean, I put that in my notes. I said that this is both an incredible slog, but also it establishes, in a way that Unearthly Child doesn't, the importance of dragging it out because you got 6 episodes, which is a long-standing tradition of Doctor Who. So this is where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Quick side note, RFS episode 246, released March 20th, 2011, has our Richard Martin miniscope with Luke from Timidwhoop.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I guessed it on that. That's right. I remember that now. Yeah. I don't remember what we said. I probably wasn't very kind.
Yeah, I'm sure it was
I bet
not,
you Luke was nicer.
Might have been.
He generally is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's realistic when it comes
true.
to people like Richard Martin, I'm sure.
That's true.
I'm not going back to listen to it, though. To find out.
I listen, I don't know what I said, but I could probably guess what I said. That's I will say that much right now.
And you'll probably say some of the same today.
Yep. You know what? The Daleks was turned into a movie, and I think it works quite well as a movie. So too does Dalek Invasion of Earth. I think there are some great stuff going on in the Daleks. I enjoy. I mean, he kind of like sets in stone like the TARDIS crew land, and basically they are the only stars in the show for that entire first episode. And then there's a shock revelation of the Dalek, and this is the only time in history that it's a shock revelation, and it is the best cliffhanger of all time, possibly because of the Dalek coming. Mostly because of Jacqueline Hill's scream and the fade to black. I think that's so many people. Like apparently the legend goes that a friend of Terry Nation picked up the phone immediately after he saw this. Says, "What the hell was that?"
I mean, to go to bat for Richard Martin or whoever was directing this.
Christopher Barry directed that episode.
That bit is really good. Like it does really feel off kilter. It's got nothing to do with the writing, but it's got. She does like the fact that she's kind of like losing it is very expertly expressed through 1/4 of a set and wobbly cameras. It actually does work effectively as far as I'm concerned.
And the music and everything else, like it is so top notch. That first cliffhanger, and the fact that you're watching an entirely different episode than the one they originally shot because there were technical problems with the first version of that. They actually shot that after episode 3, I think they redid it again, and after episode 3, so you're watching a second take of that episode. Was everything more polished, perhaps because of that? I don't know. But the script was there. I thought I love that first episode. I love the music. I love the way it's written. You know, Chris, you have contradicting thoughts, do you? Or
no, I don't. I mean, one of the things I like most about it is the Doctor. I mean, this is episode 5 of the series, story number 2. We don't yet know very much about the Doctor. I mean, I'm sure this is where like maybe David Whittaker's book could answer this more. I don't know how much of a bio sort of thing of the Doctor had been prepared for Hartnell to have to adhere to or whatever for characteristics, but just the Hartnell and his instant deviousness. He's like, I don't really know these people. I don't care what they think. Fluid Link needs mercury. We got to go to the city. And then when they're in the city and whatnot, he has to fess up. He doesn't seem that remorseful.
No.
He's kind of a jerk in this, which is kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
Because again, we don't know much about the character as yet, and Nation very much helped to shape the Hartnell Doctor, and of course, it didn't really stick around. But
No.
like even in Daleks Invasion of Earth, when we get to it, like he says to somebody, he's like, "I never take a life unless my own is in immediate danger," or whatever the wording is.
He's
But
comparatively a sweetheart at that point.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Kind of. But no, I think you're right. The structure was there, and if it's a shame that they had to stretch things out, because it worked well enough.
These one thing I liked about it is that unlike any other Dalek story, this one, you don't know what the hell the deal is with these things. You can't lean on previous Dalek story. You just can't, because you just created them. So every other Dalek story leans on the fact that, oh, these guys were a big deal and there's Dalek mania. That's in the back of the writer's head, even if it's Terry Nation, right? Here, we're just establishing these weirdos. And so they're talking conversationally, they're doing stuff they wouldn't normally do. They're still, the core of it is all there, but it's just interesting to look how they evolved and where they come from at this point.
Yeah.
And even some of the characteristics of like the dolls. As they were at the time, about being whatever, like scientists, philosophers, whatever the wording was. Like there's a history that's being made, and being that it's Nation that wrote Genesis, a decade later, that history is adhered to, and it's kind of nice to see that kind of continuity. I mean, you've got a serialized show, that continuity should be there, at least to a point.
It that reminds me of one of the Doctor Who, the NJN Eric Luskin produced documentaries in the mid 80s that aired on PBS, and we saw on KSPS here in Edmonton. And I can't remember which one it was. Then and Now, I think it was Doctor Who Then and Now, 1987. I want to say they made it around the same time that just after Patrick Troughton had died and Sylvester McCoy had been announced as the new Doctor Who, and they had an in-studio interview with Terry Nation for that. And they had several members of the local chapter of the Doctor Who fan club, one of which was a young Ken Deep.
Yes.
And the one character, the person was a character, sort of says he kind of messed up the continuity in Genesis of the Daleks. I just remember this the pure tone of that fan. And then of course Terry says, I didn't mess it up. I'm the writer. I can do what I want, basically, essentially, because he did change the name from Dals to, but whatever. Yep. I mean, how many times you're just looking at, like, it's a steel drum full of pictures. Okay, maybe we got the name wrong of our own history. I mean, how many times have archaeologists been wrong, So
and the great thing about this show has always been that it tosses continuity out the window whenever it damn well feels like it. That's a feature, not a bug of Doctor Who, frankly.
Yeah, but sometimes the show gets to atone for it as well, like the Dalek voices in Day of the Daleks. Nothing to do with Terry Nation, of course. No. But I mean, the Paul Bernard and the voice actors hired for that just had no concept of what they really should sound like. So
I mean, that's TV fault, basically.
So special edition comes along, Nick Brake steps in and remedies that that oversight.
Yeah, I mean, Warren, you mentioned about how this is the start of the Daleks, and maybe they changed a little. They don't a lot though. They basically, this sets in stone basically what the Daleks are and have been for 60 years. Like that's what's so crazy. You look at the Cybermen, and their motives, their character, so to speak, have not changed, but their outward appearance wildly has. The Daleks are essentially the same,
like the Capaldi stories with the two different sets of Cybermen. And it's gotten to the point now that we've kind of gone over the horn of the Mondasian Cybermen just being silly, and now they're back to being creepy because of the way they look.
Yeah,
but they're radically different. Yeah.
Because when were the first two successive Cyberman stories where they actually look the same?
Now that's also
like
thematic, because Cybermen are supposed to evolve.
Five doctors and
Moonbase and Tomb had the same costumes, basically.
I mean, I'm carrying water for Terry Nation here, but the Daleks have theoretically hit their final perfect form, right? Whereas the Cybermen are always evolving to whatever the next thing is.
True. But, kind of like the TARDIS itself, like the Dalek is like there from the very beginning. It's just that is the iconic enemy of Doctor Who. And as you saw in like Witch's Apprentice, or Witch's Familiar Magician's Apprentice, where they have all the Daleks of different eras in the room, it doesn't matter. like they are the same. Like that design, and that's down to Raymond Cusick, I suppose, too.
Yeah.
It's just like that, just iconic design. They're not like, the Klingons with their face painted different colors in classic Star Trek, and then of course they re-up their makeup at the movies. This is the same Dalek, and that is just iconic. It's funny watching Terry Nation stuff in general. At the early days, because if you know what's coming, and we'll talk about this in further episodes of this miniscope, you'll see the tropes. You'll see the TARDIS crew land in episode 1, and they go exploring. They somehow get separated. Shock appearance by the Dalek at the end. There's a bunch of moralizing at the end of the episode, and that's like there's the tropes that sort of happen throughout the Terry Nation stuff. That might even get a little tired and repetitive, but they're all fresh here in this first one.
And I'm not sure if this is just a First Doctor trope, or if it's his era trope, or if it's Terry Nation trope specifically. But Susan is either on the verge of a nervous breakdown or being injured or tortured in some fashion. Yeah. Every single one of these, I'm like, and also every time she raises a concern, which maybe by the second episode they wouldn't, but you'd think by Dalek Invasion of Earth they might listen to her. They're like, oh, you're just, it's typical 1960s therapy. Just stuff that feeling down. It doesn't matter. We're going to dismiss you out of hand, young lady.
Part of that is why she left.
I can't say I blame her.
Yeah, she didn't like the lack of character development and whatnot.
Yeah, although you know what, Terry Nation liked her enough. Simon Gary did some digging and found out that Terry Nation held a big birthday party around the time, I think, production of Dalek Invasion of Earth. And there's an on the record invite of Terry Nation inviting Caroline Ford and presumably a whole bunch of other people from Doctor Who over to his big birthday party. So obviously he liked her enough. But you're right. I feel like you could sort of chart Caroline Ford's enthusiasm for the show basically at the checkpoints that are Terry Nation stories. I got to be really dramatic in the Edge of Destruction, and I got to like hang out with my friend Ping Cho and Marco Polo, and I'm screaming about sounds in my head and shoes and stuff. Come Keys of Marinus,
Even in the behind the sofa for Dalek Invasion of Earth, she's talking about how she could, she could dance. She was a gymnast. She could ride horses. She could do lots of physical activities and never got to do any of them.
I mean, I don't want to slag off Terry Nation specifically because I don't know what his sexual politics was, but at the time, I can totally see a bunch of older guys writing a young teenage girl and not knowing what the hell to do, especially one in the 60s. Yeah. And so completely falling back on their old attitudes. And that's kind of what comes through here.
Yeah, I mean, he's born in 1930. I mean, that's, the England that he grew up in is not the same England that we know of today. That's for damn sure,
Not even the same England of 1963. We don't get down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an adventure story. I think he just writes good adventure stories. Oddly enough, though, and we'll see this through the whole thing. For a comedy writer, as he was known at the time for writing for Tony Hancock, not a lot of jokes. Not a lot of jokes in his stories. I was expecting like wall to wall, like some little zingers here and there, but not even really any zingers. At least I don't think so.
I have two little side notes.
Sure.
One is that model shot of the Dalek city goes so hard. Like I just saw that and I was like, this is breathtaking for 1963. So much so they used it again for Which Is Familiar, just because it looks so good.
Well, it's funny right? You mentioned that. I mentioned before about how they had to reshoot the first episode because of the technical difficulties. The model maker said, we didn't like how that first model looked. Let's take this opportunity and rebuild the model, which is what they did. So credit that PA's talkback on his headset coming through on the recorded audio track, forcing them to reshoot that episode because we wound up with a better looking Dalek City and a better screen possibly from Jacqueline Hill, the cliffhanger.
My other side note was when I was about episode 3, I put down a note. When you think about it, other than being kind of jerks to our crew, what have the Daleks actually done that justifies opening them up and gutting them? Like, not a lot yet. Yeah, like they will, but they haven't as of yet.
No.
I mean, it's the only available equivalent of knocking the guard out and stealing his uniform.
I guess so. Yeah.
So it's more practicality than.
But I was like, kind of needlessly harsh given what they know so far about these guys.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
they are genocidal maniacs, but we know that later. So
they literally did shoot Ian and paralyzed him. Couldn't feel his legs after that. So they're jerks right out of the gate, but it's just a fun adventure story. Like this happens, but then this happens, but then this happens, but then that happens. That's sort of like, going through the whole plot until we get to 5 and 6 when it is unfortunately has to be stretched out. But the whole I love the conceit that the doctor fakes the accident with the Mercury so we can go down to the city. Now that we're captured, I might as well tell you there's nothing wrong with the thing, the fluid link, and they get angry because of that. Well, we got out of the city, hand me the fluid link. It's back in the city. We have to go back. There's a reason for it all happening. There's, everything has a reason for it to sort of go sequentially in order like that. And that just makes a good story,
Some of it maybe a little more tenuous than other parts, but yes.
Yeah. I like it. I genuinely love that first Dalek story. I think and especially as history goes on and you see what comes of it, you're seeing the genesis of the show. It goes from 6.9 million that first week to over 10 by the end of the story. Like that's where it becomes the success that it's become, and it's cool to see that. Very cool. Any further thoughts on the Daleks?
Well, one other thing that is a reflection of the times is where Barbara sees what's his name, the head Thal, and goes, "You are perfect, blonde, blue-eyed." I'm like, whoa, okay, Barb, what's going on here?
Yeah, a little.
That's a little bad choice of words in 2024. Let's put it that way.
But you know what? That was kind of the thing, because that's kind of what convinced Verity Lambert to tell Sidney Newman, these are not just your normal bug-eyed monsters. They're people who survived a war and now are resorted to having to live in these casings in order to survive. The story kind of tries to say that, like, it's the Thals who are ugly and they're awful people and everything like that with the Daleks. Say before we actually meet them, and then we see them. Yes. You're right. And then, like, there is this sort of, perceived...
The elves and Tolkien kind of a deal.
Kind of like that. Yeah, kind of like that. So it's an interesting thing that they do, I thought. Chris, any final thoughts on the Mutants, Serial B, we'll call it?
Technically, I watched less than you guys did.
That's true.
But no, I mean, I have always enjoyed it for the most part. There's a lot of things, and I don't know if it's just a story necessity that is universal, or if it's more Doctor Who or whatever. But just even things that we see later on, like we've got a lot of people in the TARDIS, we got to split them up, and they actually have useful things to do, and all that, and we see it again in Daleks Invasion of Earth, of course, and Keys and Marinus as well, I guess. But it's enjoyable. It is too long. It is too padded.
Yep.
I think, no disrespect to Benjamin Cook or et al., but the Daleks. I'm wondering if the three episode 75-minute cut for the color release.
Right.
I wonder if that would exist if we didn't have the Peter Cushing movie at 86, 88 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which are both delightful, by the way, I have to say.
Yeah.
Where we already have this precedent of this severely cut down version, which somehow still works or works well enough. And the color, Daleks in color is, I wish it was a little more, maybe even 90, 100 minutes.
Right.
But I still enjoy the story.
Yeah. At the heart of it, it's a good story. That's the thing we're looking at here, I think. It's, given that it's been made into many different aspects of that, to the very first novelization back in 1965, Doctor Who and an Exciting Adventure with the Daleks, and as you say, the film and the Daleks in color. I mean, it's been adapted so many times and changed and everything, but the heart of that story is still there. So,
and the same base story was sold by Nation to the BBC how many times?
Exactly.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
I was just going to say that. Hope you enjoyed the structure of the Daleks, because you're going to be seeing a lot of it over the next 3 miniscopes after this. But hey, Doctor Who's a hit, and the Daleks are massively successful. So, and it's literally in January, Terry Nation, once again, he wrote these in like June, July, off in Sweden, does other stuff. Gets a call week 1 saying, hey, the Daleks are pretty cool. What are these? And January, David Whittaker gets in contact. Well, here's the deal, Terry Nation. We had you down for a story about the Red Fort, the Indian Mutiny in 1857. We're going to need...
they didn't do that one.
Yeah, we're
referenced in the Daleks' invasion of Earth as well.
With insensitive racial epithets at the time.
Yep.
And I just love the way that Barbara has to say, not India. Yeah. So anyway, they say instead of we're trying to do this Hidden Planet thing by Malcolm Hulke, but it's not working. So can you write us really quickly, given that you wrote your Dalek story really quickly beforehand, can you write a 6-part story in 4 weeks? Is what David Whittaker did. We'll hammer it out together.
Terry Nation.
Yeah, Terry Nation.
David Whittaker had a very heavy hand in it.
He did because he's a story editor, and he says, we need to hammer this out." So he went back and forth with Terry Nation, and so they came upon this idea of doing basically 4 mini adventures in a 6-part story. Listen, they hammered this out in January. They were shooting it in March. It was airing in April. I love 1960s TV. I just love it.
Wait a minute, it totally shows.
It totally shows, but I just love the breakneck speed at which television happened in those days when they were shooting 52 episodes in one production block, and they were airing about 45 of them in a single season. So that's how quickly Keys of Marinus came together and was shot. And as you say, Warren, it shows.
Yes, it really does. Although I have to say, one of my notes for the first episode is they're doing a lot of world building with about $10. And they really are. Like, it does feel like an alien world they're on, even though they've got like a bit of water and it's supposed to be acid and a bit of fake sand. And like, they actually do a pretty damn good job of convincing you of that, given what they're working with.
Again, nothing to do with Nation. Some of the trickery used, like the forced perspective, hallway things and whatnot. They don't look so great, but they're effective enough.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly. Obviously,
Mr. Stagehand.
You see him a few times
behind the swinging door.
Yeah. Which is pretty great. I mean, essentially, it's the Key to Time season, except in one 6-part story. Which can be fun, but I mean, for a story that was like short notice, and like, Raymond Cusick also designed this one, and he was kind of like having to beg for like any details whatsoever. This is what's fascinating about 60s Who, is that any pre-filming you see is usually like model stuff or some location stuff, usually without the or like Ealing stuff or something like that, usually without the main cast because they're busy rehearsing and recording the actual TV show, and usually with little or no dialogue because they basically they know that they have to shoot that stuff first and get the design team on that while they actually work on rehearsing the in-studio stuff. So basically, they go, okay, it's going to be set on an island with a pyramid, and there's going to be some submarines. So model makers and film people make that while I get the rest of the story written. You notice how these things are sort of structured. When you look at Dalek Invasion of Earth, there's a bunch of films. It's 5 days worth of filming, I think, or 5 or 6 days. And no dialogue. It's all Barbara, Dortmund, and Jenny run through deserted London chased by Daleks. There's a big revolt in the quarry.
It goes on way too long, but it's still kind of cool anyway.
It's cool, yeah, but that's the stuff that they base it, like, you kind of have to, when you're writing an episode, you have to sort of structure it, knowing that they wouldn't have any rehearsal time for that filming stuff to rehearse lines and stuff like that you sort of have to structure it like that. That's a fascinating aspect of early 1962.
Just as a quick aside, we also have talked about in the past Patty Russell. And the way she shot Deserted London for Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Yeah. And I mean, they did practically the same thing for that. They shot it like Daleks Rolling Through Trafalgar Square, for example, was shot at 6 a.m. on a Sunday.
Yeah, it's still cool as hell. Like, it still looks cool 60 years later.
Iconic, yeah.
It is iconic.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that one. First, we got to deal with the Keys of Marinus.
One of the things I wrote down for Keys of Marinus, just because it's an episode 1 thing, and it involves a line. So whether it's a Billy Fluff or whether it's a Terry Nation thing, I don't know. But at one point, they're talking about the quote unquote water around the island, and if it's cold or whatever. And the doctor just says, it's impossible in this temperature. Besides, it's too warm.
Yeah, you get the impression because of that. Like the cast got the script pretty late and that William Hartnell isn't quite sure of his lines. But then when he appears again in episode 5 after a 2-week holiday, he's bang on. So much so that, as pointed out in a recent Toby Haydock's podcast, Too Much Information, about episode 5 of the Keys of Marinus, which is the most recent one of recording of this, he said that there are typos in the script. There are 3 typos. I can't improve. I can't prove that I can, that he didn't do this. And Hartnell delivers them verbatim. He nails every single line in the script, even the ones that are wrong in the script.
Which is a sign of a good actor in a weird way.
Yeah, it really is. But because he had like 2 weeks off to sort of really get to grips with the last 2 episodes. But honestly, I think in retrospect, I like the setup. I like the finish. To have 4 different stories across 4 different episodes was going to be a stretch for anyone. In retrospect, I wish they would have had, like, we have to find 2 extra keys or maybe 3 extra keys and have, like, basically episode 2 and 3 be the same setting. And then episode 4 and 5 maybe be the same setting, and just sort of like you can flesh things out. Because as it stands, they're basically just sort of like brushstrokes of a society here, knowing that we only have to provide a setting for a 25-minute episode.
But like you said, this is being watched week to week, and people aren't going to remember like the way we are. They're not going to see all the holes in this thing.
Good point.
I did refer to the city in episode 2 as a city entirely devoted to gaslighting.
Yeah,
because it really is. I also said I love these brain jar guys because they sound like Noel Coward in a gin-fueled tour of the finer salons, and they really do. They're just like, oh yes, Levy.
Yeah.
Doctor Who as a show, as a concept is something, and we recently talked about this on the episode, on an episode proper through that RTD SFX interview, but how everything changes episode to episode, or story to story, whatever, and that can make things difficult enough. This one changes literally every episode for the 4 things in the 6 parts. And I'm not going to say that it was necessarily done as well as it could have been, but given the time constraints, I'm in.
And it is the show's core philosophy, right? Go anywhere, do anything.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I mean, things like the whole hypnosis factor in the city, and what a beautiful bolt of silk. Hey, can I have a dress? Oh, okay, here it is, but it's actually rags. Or the one of the best money saving things that's ever been done on the show is Ian and the doctor walk into the quote unquote laboratory.
Yeah.
And there's this ratty old metal mug sitting on the counter. That's the only thing in the room.
Yeah.
And the doctor picks it up. With equipment like this. Like that's just brilliant.
Because they've sold the fact that it's an illusion earlier on in an episode, so they don't need to show what they see, anymore. Because we've seen everyone else see the opulence of the clothes and everything like that, but then we see what Barbara sees because the hypnosis didn't play out, and so you're free to just go, well, we just need to show the crap version of it from now on. You're right. Yeah. Holds up a mug. That's so great.
Beautiful.
Yep. That is smart writing right there. That is knowing your budget, basically. And not going over it, rather. Yeah.
Experienced writing, I dare say.
Yeah, I'd say it was. Yeah.
The brains in a jar, that is probably one of the lesser effects.
I love them. They're so cheesy.
Especially since they were supposed to, like when they get destroyed. So for all 3, well, actually, sorry, just 2, because not for Daleks, but anyway, for this and Dalek Invasion of Earth, I watched with the info text because I haven't done that in forever.
Oh, I love
and they're talking about they were talking about how the brains are supposed to like wilt and whatever more convincingly or more pronouncedly or whatever, and it didn't happen. So they just kept going. because that's all they could do.
Yep. I remember when I watched it first, and I thought, "Oh, she accidentally smashed one of them because she was supposed to smash all four of them, but she only got
all of them.
She only got one, so that seems like the mistake that she accidentally broke one of them. But you're right. Only one take, basically. So do your best. We'll deal with it. Yeah, you know.
But I mean, even with the fact that they have as many different settings as they do, it's a nice. There's the fantastic bridge with Altos and Sabitha,
right, being
there for the journey after episode 2, so that you still have this variety, and you have this I don't want to say comfort necessarily, but
continuity, perhaps
continuity. Yeah, that's a good word. Just going throughout, and I mean that helps to bridge the gaps, and obviously they become Altos and Sabitha become quite pivotal in the courtroom stuff in episodes 5 and 6.
Yeah,
and I've always enjoyed this story.
Oh, good.
Like I said, it doesn't necessarily look the best. It wasn't necessarily realized the best.
Yeah. It's not even that great, but it's still fun.
Some of the acting could be a little bit better.
Yeah, a little bit.
What's her face? Kidnapper woman.
Fiona Walker,
6.
later to be Lady Painful.
That was a little wooden. Maybe that's what the director wanted. I don't know.
I mean, this is the thing with 25-minute stories, let's face it, is that you kind of have to go like there's no room for intrigue, basically. No. What's his name? The murderer goes, but they said this. How could they possibly did that? I mean, I've said too much. Just like that kind of like reaction,
Yeah, or even just the whole precept of, guilty until proven innocent. For Ian in general, that's not a new thing. That's something that's been done ad nauseum, really. But I mean,
it's also the law in Quebec. Like that's how French law works.
It's still lovely Napoleonic Code Civil, whatever. But I mean that's still enough of a conceit that I can buy into. To make it worthwhile.
Right. Yeah. This planet is not like your planet. This isn't just Earth with like people with wearing funny hats. There are different actual cultural.
You hear that, Star Trek?
Yeah. Thanks to that, exactly. Yeah.
Despite William Hartnell, whether it's him or the script, I'm assuming the script, using the words "human beings" quite a lot for the Marinutians.
I mean, I always go back to. Modron's line in "You said you weren't human." It says, "I gotta flee inhuman." Basically. So there's.
See, that's just laying the groundwork for the TV movie. Duh.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I feel like Warren is probably the one who's the least fan of this story, and
I mean, it was fine, but I did type in my notes, "This text adventure sucks" at one point because I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on.
Right,
it's like I was pretty lost by the end of it. Although I did have it on, to be fair, to get through these, I was doing work and had on the background, so I was like 75% paying attention to it. I'll tell you one thing I loved though at the end. Again, it has nothing to do with Terry Nation, unless he wrote specifically for this to happen. That the Vord are in disguise because they've got people's outfits on.
Right,
just like this is not fooling anyone. Vord, come on.
This massive antenna in the back of his hood.
Yes, do not look at my face. I've got a giant cloak on for no particular good reason. No.
Roll Yartek. Yep.
Yeah. And then of course is the the attempted rape that happens in episode 4 of Snows of Terror, which is very much a thing of its time. Oof, boy. Yeah, that was a hell of a scene. Not the first or the last time that, well, maybe it was the first, but certainly not the last time that poor Barbara was subjected to
accosted,
comedy rape scene. 1960s TV, baby. Yeah. The only Doctor Who story novelized by Philip Hinchcliffe, as I recall, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I like the novelization quite a bit, as I recall.
Yeah. I remember the cover just had a shot of like a brown TARDIS in space or something like that.
No, it's the TARDIS on the island, I think. But
No, that was in
border.
space. That was in space.
It's in space.
I thought there was a Vord in there somewhere, but I could just be me.
No,
adding
well, it might be
covers.
that might be a reprint, but I just remember that one shot that might not be the very first one, but I just remember it as being that.
Also, I gotta see the Vord in this.
Oh
again,
yeah, no,
new
you're right.
Terry
I was
Yeah.
on the Wikipedia page. Yeah, it's
it
the
is.
TARDIS. TARDIS in front of a planet with like a starburst kind of thing coming over the horizon.
That says Marinus to me.
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
The Vord is a great design. Like for how much money they had,
Right.
it's pretty cool looking.
Yep. Yeah, and believe me, they
And-
tried to market the Vord like
they
they did
did.
the Daleks, but it just it didn't.
And
No,
the,
nothing they ever did worked. Like
No.
beyond the Daleks.
God
which was
no,
kinda-
Terry Nation would try himself even, as we'll find out in the next Miniscope, and that
Well,
also didn't
yeah,
take off.
separately, and then also I guess in the 1964 Doctor Who annual or whatever, there's some story in there about the Vord teaming up with the Doctor
Oh.
to defeat the Daleks,
Bless. I don't know. I haven't
Something
read
like
it,
that.
but
something like that.
yeah.
I'm trying to vaguely remember from the infotext material.
Right. It's you know what? It's an interesting story, and it's a fascinating look at how you can come up with the story and then make that story within like 3 to 4 months.
Yeah,
And it's just something that you would not do in 21st century TV. It's just
No.
you know.
coming off the heels of Marco Polo as well. I mean, I don't want to say the audience was less sophisticated. They were definitely less sophisticated back then. Anyway,
They watched a lot less TV.
the-
right?
Yeah, you hear
So
that, 1960s audiences? You
They
suck.
literally watched less than a decade of television at that point.
That's true.
Well, there are only 2 channels, and how many
That
people
too,
had TV? What proportion of people had a TV? But having this, I mean, obviously locales change in Marco Polo as well, but this 7-episode, very long journey thing, and then you transition to this 6 episodes and just multiple sub stories and locations, whatever. I gotta think it must have been at least somewhat of a breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Fun adventure stories on a Saturday night. Who wouldn't want to watch that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know? Anyway, Nation had built up a reputation of being someone who could write stories quickly, and hey, guess what? The Daleks were a big hit. So in I think June or July or August of that year. So basically, in the space of a calendar year,
Wow.
Terry Nation wrote the Daleks, then this, and then the Dalek invasion of Earth, the third story that we'll cover today, and the last story made in this epically long production block, where the Daleks invade Earth, and they want to eventually put in a core to steer it around and blow things
Sure.
up.
It's kind of irrelevant. Who cares what they want to do? It's cool as hell. And I think it whips by, honestly. It goes
honestly
real
does.
fast
It
for
does.
6 episodes.
It is a great story. I love the Dalek invasion of Earth. Chris, what about you?
I think I enjoy the Daleks more, but I'm enough of a fan of Invasion of Earth. One thing that I don't think I knew before that I learned from doing the infotext thing was, so apparently for the longest time in pre-production, they're like, this is 6 episodes, this is 6 episodes, this is 6 episodes, this is 6 episodes.
Right.
And then as they are like shooting episode 5, they're like, what if we make this 7? And
Right.
thankfully somebody decided, it's like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, it's too late. We decided it was going to be 6, whatever. So we don't want to have to rewrite this or that. And yeah, so I mean, thanks for sticking to your guns, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it cooks. It cooks along. You know, and the just a space of a year from like here's a story, I'm off to Sweden for more work, to the build up to this. Dalek Mania. This is when the Daleks really hit. Like all the Christmas toys were there, and the ratings were through the roof, like just massive ratings for the first time ever in Doctor Who. Like, you know,
Well, even
over
in
12
Keys of
million.
Marinus, they were hitting 11, 12.
Yeah, well, they were slipping towards the end, and then now it's the charting. They're like 10th, 11th, like really up
Yeah.
there.
It's kind of interesting. So just looking at the ratings, so the lowest number shared by episodes 1 and 5 is 11.4 million.
Wow,
lowest number.
Yeah, and let's face it, the rescue and into the web
Rescue
planet
definitely rode the coattails.
Yeah, really rode the coattails of the Dalek invasion of Earth, because they were getting like 13 or something like that.
The extra fun part is the appreciation index peaked at 63.
People didn't like what they were watching, but what else were they going to watch? Basically,
Well, that's just it. I think it was. Oh crap! I forget if it was. I want to say it was. Might have to look at the calendar. I'm not going to, but it was either Keys of Marinus. One of the later episodes, episode 4 or 5, something like that, was the first Doctor Who episode transmitted on BBC One.
That's right. Episode 5, I think it was.
I think it was episode 5. Because BBC Two had just come on air. So it was no longer just BBC TV. It was BBC Now 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Interesting and pedantic.
Because
that's ready for Skaro in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's not personal, Chris. That's just a general overall observation.
Yeah.
Well, like, I don't know what the population of the UK was in 1964. But as I try to Google it here, but I mean, 11.4 million. Okay, so according to a quick thing from macrotrends.net,
all right,
just shy of 54 million people in the UK in 1964. So that's not
you're looking at like 20% of the population essentially watching.
You're looking at better than 20% of the population,
I guess so.
And that's again how many people actually own TVs at that point in time.
True.
It certainly wasn't the numbers that do now.
No, also true. Yeah. Yeah, it was inescapable. It was like Beatlemania and Dalek mania. That was Britain in 1964, essentially. And it was. I mean, we talked about it earlier on this, but the analogy that the Daleks are basically space Nazis, I think, is something that gets hammered
really lean
home.
into this one here.
And here it's hammered home because it is 20 years after World War II. That is nothing. They
got concentration camps and they've got slave labor,
right?
And the Roadmen are actually pretty creepy, even though they're really just a way to work around having four.
You got the French Resistance. You've got
it's very much a World War II, and like this is a generation of people who lived through the bombings, the Battle of Britain in 1941. Having their city destroyed by bombs and everything, and then to have that visual of Daleks marching around deserted London with like graffiti like on Nelson's column and the lines and everything like that. There's just like shocking imagery for 1964.
It's kind of like the same as Japan working its feelings out with Godzilla. Like,
actually,
sort of the same the same thing.
Yeah.
One even at the end of the story when Susan's talking about her shoe having worn through, in the info text, it's even talking about things like how, because it was as close to the Second World War as it was, people of, say, Hartnell's age who lived through the war, or more, because he's like, oh, I'll mend that. Whereas Susan's like, I've got dozens of other pairs. So it's like young people's, the difference of what young people consider disposable versus what older people consider, just patch it and keep going kind of thing. The difference in the generations even is represented.
I've got old enough parents, and I'm sure other people do too, where their parents, my grandparents, went through the Depression, and that, especially in the prairies where it hit really bad, definitely carries through the generations. My parents still kind of fall back in that, we have to save this tea bag or whatever,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Susan probably racked up a ton of money on like a Temu account or something like that in the 21st century.
I mean, that's as we see in Adventure Space and Time, that thoroughly reliable documentary.
All this fast fashion that Susan now enjoys thanks to her adventures. But the doctor's trying to think, I gotta mend your one and only shoe, and then doesn't. Leaves her shoeless.
Yeah, he does. He steals it. The
22nd century. Yeah.
One thing I love is that they pretty much, this is the second time the Daleks have shown up. They nail them. They kind of got them down now. They are pretty much the Daleks we see now.
Yeah, they can move around. They have the little. I mean, I like that they feel they have to explain
more
it.
Of a speech really is more than anything else.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, I think the distortion really comes through. Why do I always forget the Daleks the voice artist name?
Skelton?
No,
That's the
Roy
operator.
Sculptor is
Hawkins?
good, but Peter Hawkins. Why do I always forget who Peter Hawkins? That's a name that always never hits my brain. Peter Hawkins really nails the voice. I think the distortion really works well. I love that they feel like they have to like explain how these Daleks are moving around now, because they used to move around in static electricity in the first story. Well, now they have these little dishes on the back and
Because some nerd kid somewhere is going to write an angry letter the New York Times about it.
Even then, they probably would. And they have like what they call our solar powered slats on things in the chase later on, because they think we have to say that they don't have the dishes on their back. Now they have the solar powered slat. Now they're just slats. That's what they exist on the Daleks from here on. Anyway, Chris,
and
you're saying
props to William Russell's delivery when it comes to the surprise about the Daleks moving around without static electricity. But then also, is it ever explained why they regress to needing static electricity, given that's at the end of their timeline?
That's in the future, as they say.
This is so much earlier. This is so much earlier, and they're that much more mobile.
I think it's decline of Rome kind of thing. They're stuck in their city. That was always my take on it.
Yeah.
And
somehow static electricity returned, basically.
Exactly. As it does.
Yeah.
And just poking around, one thing I did not know, sorry, nothing to do with Nation. Right. Apparently in Keys of Marinus and obviously The Chase, we have Edmund Warwick featuring in all three stories.
Yeah, we'll call this the Edmund Warwick trilogy, basically.
Except The Chase is, next segment.
In general, not necessarily Miniscope, but in general. Yeah. When it honestly, they missed a trick when they came out with the DVD box set. Instead of like saying, Dalek on Earth, it should be the Edmund Warwick trilogy, and then we could
something that has to do with Nation is, I think some of the dialogue is great. Like the part where he's with that prisoner who later becomes their friend, but at first he's a pain. Yeah. He goes, "Hold that and shut up, would you?"
Yeah.
That's half down to the delivery, but it's a great line.
I
also,
know.
You're a genius. Yes, and there are so very few of us left. Another great line. I laughed out loud at that one.
Yeah, there's some good, and I've read or heard recently that maybe David Whittaker might have taken a little more of a. He certainly took a pass at the final speech. I think most of that is him, although a lot of it is Terry Nation. It didn't like say like, okay, the last 10 minutes you just write it because you're writing Susan. No, I think there was actually words in there. One of my favorite lines is when Barbara and Susan get taken in by the resistance there. And they're going, well, what can you do, Barbara? You're going to cook now. Can you do cooking? Okay, you're going to cook now. Peel some potatoes. Susan, what do you do? I eat.
That's a good line.
Such a great line.
Also, Barbara's colossal nonsense festival of history at the end is pretty great.
As a history teacher, trying to say, wait, what? You could see the Daleks sort of taken. I was like, mutiny. What? Hannibal? What? Wait, what's going on here? Yeah.
And to be fair, there's very little chance the Daleks would have absorbed enough history of the Earth to have any concept of most of what she says.
They were too busy burning books instead of reading them, to quote Henry Jones Sr.
Exactly.
And apparently, as well, just a point of trivia, this is the first Doctor Who story that ever filmed in a quarry.
Wow.
And it played a quarry. for pretty
to go along with stock footage of mining.
Yeah, there was some stock footage in there. Yeah, giant 5 or 6 day location shoot, which they knew they had time for because it was the last of a season. Although even at the time that they were writing this, they didn't even know if there was even going to be a season 2, anything beyond this. Yeah.
There was to that end, there was talk of, just again going based on what the info text is saying. Mm-hmm. When Carol Ann Ford expressed her interest to leave, apparently there was talk at the time of, well, we haven't renewed this for a second season, so rather than necessarily recasting her, what if we just cancel the show?
Yeah,
we don't have to do that.
Yeah,
and
that's some Nathan Turner thinking. That is.
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if that kind of conversation is still held today.
Oh, absolutely. That's
TV. That's just such to misquote the master, it's just such a woolly line of thinking.
It is. And here's the funny thing, which basically saves Doctor Who then and again in 1970, where they basically say, maybe it's time to cancel Doctor Who. Can you come up with a suitable science fiction replacement to take its place? And they thought for a little bit and says, no, we cannot. Well, I guess we'll just keep making Doctor Who then. That's why. It's people's inability to think up a replacement for Doctor Who is why Doctor Who has kept going.
And at the same time, apparently some of the, and I don't know if this was in the original script and revised or just never in there in the first place or whatever, but some wording in the script was changed or not used because they were starting to look at international sales, and they didn't want to necessarily have this British program impose upon, local mores or whatever.
Right.
If they do sell it elsewhere. And apparently New Zealand bought it, never showed it because they thought it was too adult.
Wow. Doctor Who too woke even then, basically, is what
of course,
people were saying. I know. Yeah, Terry.
I gotta say,
go on.
The ending, like I texted you when I watched it. This still hits, is what I said, because damn, it is sad as hell, and that's partly down to the writing, even if it isn't Terry Nation.
Yeah.
And the speech was supposed to be quite different. Something about love at the end of it.
Yeah. Hartnell left out some lines, and here's to him. Here's to him. It's perfect as is.
Well,
I mean,
earlier in episode 5, where he's it's obvious there's a romance budding here, and I got to give them credit for laying the groundwork in episode 3, unlike certain other Doctor Who stories of about 10 years later that didn't do anything of the sort.
Yep.
Like, this romance starts to develop in episode 3 and keeps going, and is it a little clunky and silly? Sure, but whatever. But at one point, Hartnell says, I can see something's cooking, and I'm like, I don't know if that's subtext. It's like text, because it's way on the surface.
Right.
But it's still nice to see him just throw that in there.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think it's you're right. It's well seated throughout. There's only, the only way that Susan would leave her grandfather would be to fall in love on a war-torn planet, basically.
And even then, it wasn't her choice anyway.
Yeah, although it was her choice, but she didn't want to have the choice, is what she hated, and the Doctor knew that, and thus closed the door with her many dozens of shoes inside.
I did like seeing Barbara and Ian just watching him, not protesting or anything, just watching him, knowing, well, this is what has to happen, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, this is between them. We don't have a say in this. They don't get a goodbye scene. They don't get a goodbye scene, which is almost tragic, And the only goodbye scene that we have is between the Doctor and Susan. And they're separated. They're separated by dimensions.
It's
if you will.
So good.
It's kind of like works. The end of Doomsday.
Yeah, totally.
And they can't, like, this is it. He never comes back. He never comes back to see her.
And the melancholy kicks in about halfway through the episode, right? And it kind of builds and builds.
It is really good. It's really good. Dalek Invasion is top notch. I don't know what people think of it out there, but I think it is one of the top 10 stories from the 1960s.
Here's an example of how good it is. You can take it and make it into a wacky, silly adventure as a movie, and it's still good.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, because the Dalek Invasion Earth, such a good movie. It's such an awesome.
But it's nothing like the 6-part serial, but it's still great.
But the bones of that adventure story are there, and it's a great film. I love that movie so much because there's so much action in it, and it's good stuff. Boy, we're feeling good about Terry Nation, aren't we? Oh,
it's not gonna last,
boy.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of your favorite stories that ever exists is the next one to talk about in the next segment. So.
Any closing thoughts on these stories first before we move on to what we're going to talk about next week? Or
it's interesting to watch the evolution of the Daleks, just to steal another title. Yeah, but it is kind of cool to see. And then sort of in between, you see Kyrie's and Marinus. The whole thing is, I mean, the whole show is doing this. They're working stuff out, and it's kind of cool to see that in action in front of you.
Yeah. Week to week too. It's like, we're basically building the track as we're moving this train. And,
exactly.
And they're kind of nailing it. That's the great thing about it, is that
there's more hits and misses. Yeah.
That season really kind of hits it. Like the whole show is it is today because of what is done in that first season, and it's near perfect season of Doctor Who.
I mean, there's a lot of it dragged by current standards. Yes, absolutely.
Sure. But well, listen, you haven't sat through a lot of Netflix slow TV series that have happened. So don't talk to me about slowly paced TV series. They're back.
Whatever your weird Netflix kink is none of my business. But
yeah. Chris, any final thoughts? These first 3 stories. If not, you don't have
It's kind
to.
of interesting to watch them back to back to back.
Mhm.
I don't think I'd ever actually done that. Because I'd watch whatever, but I'd usually watch it in order.
Right.
So, it's kind of interesting. But the thing that I just never bothered to think of that kind of just blows my mind is just the rapid nature of Nation's scripts being developed and shot, and how it was 19 episodes in a year, and that's with him doing his Sweden time, as you say. So so I mean that's pretty crazy, and I'm so glad that things are as good as they are, because they could have been very much not that way.
Yep, as perhaps we'll see. In the second part of the Miniscope, your homework, kids, if you want to follow along, is the next episode.
Don't do it. We have to, but you don't.
We are going to be watching the third Dalek story, that being The Chase. And here's where things get a little complicated. We'll be watching/listening to the only missing Doctor Who story, or at least incomplete Doctor Who story, for the Miniscope for Terry Nation, Mission to the Unknown, of which, of course, another adaptation has happened with that wonderful university did a version of it back a few years ago now. So one of us might be watching that. And then we'll also be talking chiefly about the 6 episodes of the 12-part Dalek Master Plan, which is Terry Nation wrote the outline for, but then he was also doing another job at the same time, so he and Dennis Spooner split the scripts. But we'll be talking primarily about episodes 1 through 5, and then Terry Nation's last Doctor Who episode for several years, The Feast of Stephen. So that's it, kids. We get to talk about The Feast of Stephen on a Miniscope. I don't know how much we talked about it in Douglas Campfield's Miniscope, considering that we couldn't see any of it. But this time, we go deep into the feast.
The 2 lines omitted by Hartnell include one earlier in the speech. Work hard, both of you. Be gentle with her, David, and show her that life on Earth with love and understanding can be a great adventure. That second line was meant to end the speech.
Yeah, I know.
That's perfect as is. Perfect.
And remember, love is the most precious jewel of all.
Oh, God. Well done, William
That's
Hartnell. Yep.
That's a lot sappier.
A lot sappier. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Part of it is it's in the 5 Doctors. It's become iconic over the last 50-odd, 60-odd years, and it's used to great effect in Adventure in Space and Time. So all of that adds to its charm, but still, it is great on its own too.
It is.
Also, with the way that KSPS showed Doctor Who stories back in the day, seeing that speech at the start of the 5 Doctors was all of our first exposure.
A lot of people's first time, watching it was right there. That's where it found its iconic status, but of course it first appeared in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Not too many clips of The Chase appearing at the beginning of anniversary specials in the Doctor Who history, but
why?
I don't know, Warren. We'll find out.
I mean, they threw Movellans into the Capaldi era, so why not?
Yeah.
Come on.
We'll find all that out on the next Miniscope, where we talk about The Chase, Mission to the Unknown, and the Daleks Master Plan on our part 2 of our Terry Nation Miniscope. But until next time, I am Stephen in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.